And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, The Hidden Vulnerability Exposed. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. He has already presented 2 cybersecurity webinars for us throughout the month, and also is the president of Cert Nexus. Please welcome back Jeff Felice. Jeff, you now have the floor.
Thank you so much, Maya, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate the time you're taking to learn a little bit more about secure coding and our presentation today, The Hidden Vulnerability Exposed. For those who are not in the programming or development profession, Windows Snyder is a very infamous person in the profession, and she, I wanted to quote her because I think we need to understand this, that one single vulnerability is all a hacker needs. And from a programming or developer perspective, that's the reality. One single mistake can become a vulnerability and become a vulnerability that a hacker, a bad actor, leverages to essentially breach your infrastructure, whether that's to collect data or otherwise create mayhem within your environment. So, and today we're going to talk about how to prevent these vulnerabilities from occurring. So again, my name is Jeff Felice, and I serve as the president of Cert Nexus. If you're not familiar with Cert Nexus, we are a global certification body for vendor-neutral emerging technologies focused on cybersecurity, AI, data science, and IoT for business data development, IT, and security professionals. We are a global company. We have exam candidates for our certifications from over 50 countries. And I think, as everyone is aware, with cybersecurity and other emerging technologies, these technologies know no bounds, whether public or private institutions, in the private industry, across all sectors and companies of all sizes as well. So what will we learn today? We're going to really focus in on 2 areas. The first is the impact of application security and what is needed to better identify coding vulnerabilities, including those in the OWASP Top 10. And then we're also going to talk about how certification is becoming part of the new normal for development professionals. And really what we are going to ask ourselves throughout this presentation today is, are our developers our first line of security, risk, or defense? And as we'll see, many times we haven't thought about our development professionals actually instituting or implementing code that would represent a security risk to our organization. And so we want to uncover that for organizations and individuals as well. But it's like I like to do, we're going to start off with an initial poll to just ground ourselves and get an understanding of where everyone is as they come into this webinar. Diane?
All right, I just launched the poll. The first question is, where are you in your coding journey? Please select one of the options. We have learning my first language, been coding for at least a few years and furthering my skills, was fixing Y2K problems in 1999, hung up the spurs, and now manage to develop teams, or not a coding professional but want to know more. Give everyone a few more seconds here to answer. All right, going to get ready to close the poll here. And we have 16% saying they're learning their first language. 12% have been coding for at least a few years and just furthering their skills. We have 4% saying they were fixing Y2K problems in 1999. 8% hung up the spurs and now managing development. And then a huge 60% not a coding professional, but want to know more.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you participating in that poll, and it gives us an understanding of where everyone is and how we can actually tailor this information for all those that are attending. It does look like we have a wide variety of people attending. So we're going to start off with really an understanding of the coding profession or development profession. I think many times when we think about IT, we think about the right-hand side of this image, those jobs that are typically systems related. So whether that's a database administrator, a system administrator, a database developer, an IT security professional, a cloud architect, even an IT project manager or a network administrator. And those are the jobs that are commonly come to mind when we think of IT professionals. But when we look at the world of IT as a whole, half of it actually comes from the development side of the house. So those are your developers, software engineers, architects, programmers, lead developers, software testers, people that are involved in the software profession, whether they're a coding architect or other quality profession. And many times, as we've seen, is that we've really not only think about those folks as not sometimes being IT professionals, but being development professionals separate from IT professionals. But more importantly, we haven't always factored them into our security equations. And the challenge for us is only increasing and that's actually through opportunity. So there's more good, if you look at it, there's roughly 24, 25 million development professionals today, and that number is only going to grow. And as we look at more types of even our core technologies or systems technologies that are requiring software-defined networking and other programming and scripting capabilities, even up and through our marketing teams and marketing automation, some of that is requiring now not only HTML, but some basic scripting capabilities. The fact is this pool is going to grow exponentially. They project those that are actually, coding professionals that are using code on a daily basis will be roughly 29 million in the next 4 years. But if you look beyond that, that number is even going to be greater yet again. And with that number and with that growth in the profession is the challenge of how do we ensure that these individuals are participating in secure coding concepts and principles, applying those concepts and principles, and in secure coding processes. First, we have to understand that application security has become critical to business success. You can see this quote from White Hat. If you're not familiar with White Hat, they're well known in the secure coding sphere, and they have a statistics report that they provide every year. And you can see the quote that they have here, which is the pace and rate of change in today's application development is blindingly fast. And we'll actually look at some statistics later on. But I think what's also important to note is they've done some testing, and they tested over 250 Android apps, and roughly almost 3 in 4 actually had it leak and sensitive personal data. Then they went on to test retail apps, travel apps, and financial apps as well. And as you can see, all of them performed poorly. They leaked some level of sensitive data. Now, again, that sensitive data may have been a first or last name. It could have been an email. It could have been all of the above. It could have been other even more sensitive data that includes financial data such as credit cards or other identification numbers that are unique to that individual. So obviously, despite the best attempts by the industry, we're still developing applications, apps, and other software solutions that are that do contain vulnerabilities that, again, hackers can take advantage of. And you can see this from CVE vulnerabilities. They looked at a number of commercial and open source software, and they found 12,000 new vulnerabilities in 2019. I actually just read a report, GitHub. If you're not familiar with GitHub, it's a third-party repository where literally millions of people participate and store their code or share code through the repository or both. And they've now released a new code scanning app or capability to their platform, which it has actually gone through since May when they launched their beta, and has actually scanned over 20,000 repositories. I'm sorry, over 12,000 repositories. And in those 12,000 repositories, they found over 20,000 vulnerabilities. So you can see that, and again, this is code that is being not only companies are actually storing, but also being shared and as part of our open source society. And the fact is that these vulnerabilities are leading to record numbers of breaches. And with those record number of breaches is the number of records themselves, data records that are being exposed. And what many of us don't recognize is that application security risk is greater for us than our networking security risks. Many of us think about someone, a hacker penetrating our network, and they're doing that through whatever nefarious means that they're using or approaches. And but they're doing it through, mainly through, whether it's a router or through our network operating system, or somehow infiltrating in our hardware and software on the network side. But what we don't realize is that if a hacker is able to infiltrate through a software vulnerability, the risk is much greater to the organization. Why so? Well, for a couple reasons. One is these applications vulnerabilities, typically think about it, applications are either homegrown and then are integral to the core of a business, or they're third-party software applications, and they may have hundreds, thousands, potentially millions of implementations and users. So therefore, the problem is propagated much further because of just the breadth of installations. So, but if we look at it just on the right-hand side, we can see this graphic and see that roughly for every internal vulnerability, the risk is roughly 6 times higher, and then for external, think outward-facing, web-facing, the increase is 9 times of an application vulnerability over a network. So again, even though the application vulnerabilities may be fewer at this time, the risk associated with them is much greater, again, because of the breadth of reach of these applications. But also, you think about it, many times applications are linked directly to data sources as well. So I alluded to earlier is the rapid growth of the coding profession. And here's a few statistics that support that, and also which are creating an environment which is becoming more difficult for us to develop and ensure secure code. The first is that in 2018, and this number's only grown, there was over 111 billion lines of new software code each year. We also have to recognize a lot of that code is being shared. As much as 70% of the code is shared in either through open source software or third-party libraries or repositories like GitHub. Again, this has fueled phenomenal innovation across all industries. And so we don't want to stem that level of sharing or innovation that's being created by these shared repositories, but we'll have to discuss how do we ensure that they are becoming more secure. Obviously, GitHub is taken a huge step forward by trying to automate some of the basic vulnerability assessments of code, but it still, again, requires individuals to have the skills to do that on top of that. So not only do we have more code and more of it's being shared, but more of it's being developed under iterative development processes. Using whether Agile or Scrum or other approaches, we're more focused on iterative releases. So yes, if you're familiar with Agile type development processes, it's produce a feature, push it out, then iterate on top of it, and that could include fixing it as well. And what that is doing is it's reducing the amount of time that developers have to spend on security issues. So again, inherently, none of these are bad on their own, right? Agile development methodologies allow for greater flexibility in our development and release schedules. The reuse and open source nature of code has allowed for greater innovation and shared progress. And the fact that we're developing more code, again, is leading to more digital transformation and initiatives within organizations. But the challenge is developers really need and want more. So 3/4 of developers worry about the security of their applications. Think about that. 3 out of every 4 developers now are concerned about whether the code they're developing is fully secure or not. 85% of those developers rank security as very important in the coding and development process. So they understand that even despite the time pressures associated with these ever-increasing agile development life cycles, the fact is that security is still important to them and important to the businesses for whom they're providing this code. And 70% of developers have not fully received the security certifications in their current role. So again, there's a desire to do so, to develop and validate those skills around secure coding. But again, the opportunities have not been presented to them to do so. So now we're going to head into our second poll. So Mayan, if you can launch that for us.
All right, I just launched the second poll. The question is, which of the following presents the greatest risk to an organization? LAN networking, WAN networking, client-server applications, or cloud web-based applications? Give everyone a chance here to click an answer. Close it in a few seconds here. All right. A few more seconds here before I close the poll. All right. We have 3% saying LAN networking, 21% saying WAN networking, 28% saying client-server applications, 48% saying cloud web-based applications.
That's great. And the fact is that all answers are correct. All do represent a potential security risk to an organization, but the web-based applications do present the greatest risk to an organization. Again, understanding that coding vulnerabilities are greater than networking vulnerabilities, and those coding vulnerabilities that are external or external facing to an organization represent the greatest risk to an organization. And thanks everyone for participating, and especially for those folks on the West Coast. We know it's early in the morning, especially for such heady questions, so greatly appreciate the participation. So let's talk about how do we integrate security into our development processes. As we discussed, there's various software development processes, whether waterfall, Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, and there's others as well. And the fact is despite your software development process, you have the opportunity to integrate secure coding practices into those processes. And it starts really with guidelines. And these are guidelines that are included in our cybersecurity course offering leading to the cybersecurity CSC certification, but are again generally available throughout the industry. And I'm not going to read each of these, but it's really important to understand what are best practices or guidelines you should be implementing again throughout your development lifecycle. So the first is, is examining each phase or aspect of your development process, and where and how does it address security today, and where's potentially it's lacking. You need to also identify functional as well non-functional security requirements, right? Much like you are developing requirements for how someone's going to engage with your software application or the features it's going to provide, you need to also understand, where are the potential security risks. You're going to need to think about threat modeling to start to identify and prioritize risk. We'll look at the OWASP Top 10 that helps identify the top 10, but again, based on your unique application, some may be more prevalent than others. You're going to have to determine how you fix security defects, right? And then how do you actually create unit tests, whether automated or manual, to alert you if the problem is fixed or not. You're going to have to establish ongoing monitoring and testing to identify when new security issues emerge. And you have to stay apprised of vulnerabilities in systems as well. The fact is, we are two things. One is typically the software applications or apps or web solutions that we're developing. They're typically not static. We're continuing to improve upon them, whether that's through fixes or adding features. And we also have to think about, as we're doing that, and as other technology advances, what vulnerabilities may be created by our code or may be occurring in our larger ecosystem that may impact our applications as well. And we also have to follow the general principles of security design. And there's really 5 areas of focus here. The first is on openness. Really what you have to do is assume that attackers have all the information they need to exploit your app. And the fact is that we are that hackers are not always as sophisticated as we think. Unfortunately, what they do have access to is information that allows them to be more sophisticated in some cases than they actually are. I was just reading the other day, and this is a bit of an aside, but malware many times delivers ransomware, and ransomware can be delivered through other means now, but there's actually malware and ransomware franchising that's being set up where people can actually go and purchase these tools and techniques and to leverage them. So really it takes someone that has nefarious means or intentions and has the means to go acquire that technology, not even to have the intellect themselves to do that. So you have to have the assumption that there's a variety of ways that that they may attack you. There's these threat factors, and you need to protect for yourself against them. You have to have fail safes in place. So you need to always ensure that your software ends up in the most secure state. You also have to start with the least privilege. So design your apps to allow as few permissions as possible, right? So what that means is that, you know, not everyone, if you need someone to do some very basic things, you should give them very basic access. You shouldn't give everyone the full access if they don't need it. And this can be hierarchical. We can talk about inherited rights and everything else, but you have to think about that, starting with the least privilege and then building for those upon that for those who need it. Also, resource economy. You have to be prudent with the shared resources and only rely on trusted resources. And then complete mediation. You need to, again, always check your code for any flaws or vulnerabilities. Again, there are software applications and platforms that allow assist in doing this, but again, they're never going to be 100% accurate, right? There's always going to be something that could be improved upon through human intervention. And again, that's where we need to develop the skills and knowledge to do so. For those who are not familiar with OWASP, OWASP is essentially a standard awareness organization. It's not a standards organization. I shouldn't say that. We think of them as a standards organization. They're not. It's a not-for-profit foundation that's focused on application security. And they've produced as their OWASP Top 10. And they update this as needed. And what this is the top 10 application security risks. It's not meant to be comprehensive. There are obviously other application security risks that are being leveraged by, again, those bad actors, the cyber criminals. But these are the most common and the ones that are most commonly found in code. And so they produced this document for developers and web application security. And really what it is, again, is that consensus of what are the things that you should check for in your code if you're going to check, the most likely ways that people are going to, again, breach your infrastructure through your application or through leveraging your vulnerabilities in your code. These are the 10 that do that. We cover these as these 10, but again, there are other best practices, guidelines, frameworks that we cover as well in the classes that we provide through New Horizons. But it's important to know that really, if you're starting in the profession, this is the best place to start. And as you facilitate or augment your training and certification, this is a great place to go. It is the OWASP site. So we're going to go into our third poll at this point in time.
All right, I just launched the third poll. The question is, which phase of development is security most important? Design, development, testing, implementation, or all of the above? Give everyone a chance here to answer the poll before I close it. All right. Give everyone a few more seconds here. All right, so I just closed the poll. We have 8% saying design, 3% saying implementation, and 89% saying all of the above.
Right. And it is important at every phase, and all above the is the most correct answer. But again, all of those answers are correct. The fact is that if we know, those who know, right, if you at the design state, or phase, if you are designing a application that's going to perform poorly, it could be the same thing from a security standpoint as well. It's the same at the implementation stage, right? You need to make sure that you're implementing secure code, but all the above is the best answer of all the answers. But again, each phase being important throughout the process. Great. So we're going to talk a little bit about Cybersecure Coder. This is an offering that is available from Cert Nexus through New Horizons. And really the focus is here is not so much to focus as much on the training or the associated certification, although we'll talk about that, but is the opportunity for training for cyber professionals and particularly programming and development professionals. Again, as we saw, 70% are lacking that training and or certifications today, and which many desire to have. And again, from an employer standpoint, there's a greater necessity for that within your organization. In fact, what we're starting to see more broadly in through data privacy initiatives and other cybersecurity programs and risk and compliance approaches from organizations, is that not only they're requiring organizations to have generally good data privacy protections, but also if they're providing a software as a service or a platform or an application, that they also are training and certifying their professionals as well. And the reason for that is it starts to reduce the risk, or at least that organization that's the recipient of that code or platform or service has done their due diligence to ensure that they're providing the most secure environment for their employees, customers, partners, whatever it may be. So really, when you think about secure coding, the principles and concepts are independent of the tools or languages being used. So when we defined the need for secure coding practices, we really looked at it as being agnostic of, again, a language. So whether it's C#, C++, Java, Python, PHP, it really doesn't matter. You can apply, again, all these principles and concepts, and again, same thing with tool sets or other platforms that are being used. So the concepts and principles taught in Secure Coder, again, are applicable to any programming language. We do use Python and JavaScript in the course because we had to pick one for hands-on. Over 50% of the course is hands-on, but it's not a typing test. If you're not a expert Python programmer and understand all the syntax, you'll still be fine. It's less about typing the correct syntax and more understanding how to identify vulnerabilities. And again, the target audience really is quite wide, right? We think about the coding profession and we think about programmers and developers, but we also need to think about the software architects. Someone answered, about in the design phase earlier. So you do have to have those people that are defining and designing your solutions, and also through your software testing organization as well, because those people are many times the secondary or I'll call it a backstop, right? That may catch these vulnerabilities. They may not fix them, but they may help to catch them as well. The Cybersecure Coder exam, for those who are interested, is available through Pearson VUE testing centers or online through their online proctoring platform OnVUE. All of the New Horizons centers are Pearson VUE testing centers. And the exam is 80 questions and takes roughly 2 hours to complete. But I think what's interesting here is looking at the domains that are covered within the exam. Think about the common secure application terminology and concepts. So I really need to understand what are those terminology and concepts that are useful or needed within secure application. We also need to talk about the processes associated with secure application development. As we learned, it's throughout the entire development lifecycle. How to architect and design secure code, and then how to assess and manage risk, and then how to go on and implement secure applications. Again, the goal here is to validate that skills and knowledge so individuals can feel both confident and capable of implementing secure coding solutions, along with everything else they're doing throughout their development process, including other software solutions that may assist them in these processes as well. So we're going to move to our last poll of the day.
All right, I just launched the last poll. The question is, which of the following roles will need to understand secure coding principles? Software architect designer, lead developer, junior software programmer, software tester, or all of the above? All right, everyone's getting their answers in. All right, getting ready to close the polls here. All right, and the answers we have here, 6% say software architect designer, and 94% say all of the above.
All right, and all of the above is the most correct answer. And again, all the answers are correct. So again, it really is the entirety of your software development personnel. So again, whether that's an architect, a developer, programmer, whether a junior or more senior person, as well as those that are involved in the testing process as well. Great job, everyone. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Mayan, who will take us through a couple more slides and then into the Q&A.
All right, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, please take a moment right now to type it into the questions box, and then we'll get to them in just a few. Want to hear what you have to ask Jeff on this topic here. If you are interested in any of the material that was presented in this webinar, or if you just have questions regarding cybersecurity course offerings, please contact your local center for more information. You can log on to newhorizons.com and do a quick zip code search to find the centers that is nearest you. As you know, New Horizons has been delivering online classes since 2001, and our facilitators are trained really to engage our learners and encourage class participation. So if you have any questions, please make sure to reach out to us. Another thing is I did mention that we are having a month-long webinar series surrounding cybersecurity awareness. Jeff has done 3. This is his 3rd webinar with us. So we have a lot more great topics to cover in the upcoming weeks. So make sure to take a look at our webinar schedule and register for any of the sessions that may speak to you or have any benefit to what you're doing. Lastly, just a quick reminder that this session is being recorded, and we will be sending that link out to you later today. All right, let's get on to questions here, Jeff. We have one that just came in here. It says, what would you recommend as a good starting point for an individual with no coding experience, but decent computer usage skills?
You know, that's a great question, and there's several different answers. You know, the first is really learning a language that is of interest to you, but also that could be utilized across those professions that are growing most rapidly. I many times lean towards Python, and because Python is used in a variety of ways. It's used in some standard programming standard applications, but also used in data science and artificial intelligence as well. But it really is getting a good fundamental understanding of object-oriented programming, learning a language, and then you think about the applied use of that language. I know that New Horizons has a variety of courses that are available, and really thinking about that path is, what is the profession do you want to be in? Do you want to be a data scientist? So if you're a data scientist, there's Python and R are again the most likely. But if you're thinking about, hey, maybe it's machine learning as well, and maybe there's other web or standard client server applications, again, it could be that. If you're working for an organization that is a Microsoft house, you're going to start to look at maybe a C# or a .NET, essentially having skill sets again that meet the needs of your organization. But it really is, it's development. Becoming a development professional. There's not really a shallow end of the pool. Maybe with JavaScript, learning scripting languages, but really, it's one of those things where you really just need to dive in and give it some thought beforehand, what you want to do or what's most applicable to your current job or jobs you'd like to have at your company or elsewhere, and then just diving in and doing it.
Great. Another question that did come in is, what are the most sought after vendor neutral certifications?
So it really depends where you, what profession you're in. So are you in the system side or in the development? So on the system side, there's a number of vendor neutral certifications. We, Cert Nexus, provide them around cybersecurity and other emerging technologies. So again, data science, AI, IoT, but there's other organizations that have around cybersecurity. So a good example of that would be ISC squared, CISSP for those who are cybersecurity professionals and management related roles. ISACA is another one. CompTIA has great foundational vendor neutral skills. Also, they have a line in regards to cybersecurity as well. But there's others that are growing. The Blockchain Training Alliance and blockchain. And again, there's numerous out there. What I would say is when you're looking for vendor neutral certifications, you want to make sure that these are industry certifications and not certificate programs. And what that means is that the certification provider has gone through a more elongated, involved process, bringing third-party practitioners from the industry to help define what the job skills that are needed, what are the related knowledge that someone needs to acquire, and then the ability to validate that. So again, ourselves and some of the other noted certification companies have gone through that process. The only thing I'd be wary of is if you're looking at someone that, if it's a certificate program, so both the training and this certificate was developed by an individual and doesn't really have credibility across the industry itself.
Great, that's a really good answer to that, because we, as you said, vendor neutral. There are many out there that can benefit from a lot of this cybersecurity information. Right now, it seems like you've answered a lot of questions. If anyone else has any questions that they want Jeff to answer, please make sure to just type it in here while we have him on the line. I'll give folks a little time here just to do that. But this was again, Jeff, another great session that you've presented for us on cybersecurity. So,
great.
All right. Well, I think you've done such a good job. You answered everyone's questions if they had any. With that being said, everyone, Jeff, as always, thank you for presenting on behalf of New Horizons. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Please be on the lookout for the recording link coming out later today, as well as taking a look at what we have planned in the next upcoming weeks for webinars surrounding cybersecurity. That being said, you may now log off. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.